Chris Pine had expected the usual blend of banter, political commentary, and witty back and forth when he walked onto the set of The View, but the moment the cameras rolled, he could tell the energy was different. The studio felt charged in a way that made the hair on his arms prickle, as if the room itself sensed that a collision was coming. The audience, packed tighter than usual, buzzed with anticipation, half leaning forward, half gripping their armrests, because when Whoopi Goldberg planted her elbows on the table and stared down a guest, it usually meant she was about to start something. Chris, dressed casually in a soft denim shirt and slate-colored slacks, crossed one leg over the other and flashed his signature half-smile. The panel had just finished a light segment about viral pet videos, but Whoopi hadn't laughed once. Not even a smirk. Sunny had tried to get her attention twice. Joy had thrown in one of her sarcastic quips. Nothing moved her. She sat still, watching Chris, waiting. So, Whoopi finally began as the applause waned, her tone sharper than usual. Chris Pine, you've been doing a lot of interviews lately. A lot of comments going around. And I have to ask, because this is The View, do you think maybe you're, I don't know, out of touch? The room shifted. A few audience members let out small, surprised gasps. Joy straightened in her seat, sensing heat. Sarah scooted her mug a little farther from the edge of the table. Chris's smile didn't break, but something in his eyes flickered. He knew the line she was referring to, an offhand remark from a recent interview about Hollywood culture, taken wildly out of context by social media. He had explained it 3 times already on other shows. The internet had still eaten it alive. I'm curious, he said, his voice calm, steady. What makes you say that? Whoopi leaned back, hands clasped over her stomach, eyebrows lifted as if to say don't play coy. You said, she continued, that people spend too much time being offended and not enough time thinking. Now, I don't know if you've noticed the world lately, but people have a right to be offended. Things are messy out there. And when someone like you, someone cushioned by privilege, tells people to calm down and think more, well, it rubs folks the wrong way. The audience murmured again. Some nodded, some folded their arms. Chris inhaled slowly, pressing his tongue against the inside of his cheek before responding. I didn't say people shouldn't be offended, he said. I said that sometimes we react before we understand the full picture. That we get swept into outrage before we stop and consider context. That's not privilege, it's just observation. Whoopi shook her head. That's easy to say when you don't have to live with the consequences of the things people are offended by. Joy attempted to jump in. Maybe we should let him clarify before we. Whoopi held up a finger, stopping Joy mid-sentence. The audience tensed again. Joy's eyebrows shot up. Sunny blinked hard. Chris sat forward, elbows resting on his knees. He kept his composure, but a steeliness began forming beneath his tone. Whoopi, with all respect, you're reducing a nuanced point into a soundbite. You're assuming I was dismissing people's experiences. I wasn't. I was talking about how we communicate in a world where outrage spreads faster than truth. Oh, please, Whoopi replied, rolling her eyes in a slow, exaggerated sweep. That's just another way of saying, people are too sensitive nowadays. It's not, Chris said firmly. It's saying we should think deeper before we judge. The audience clapped, quiet, uncertain, but supportive. Whoopi didn't acknowledge it. She leaned forward now, mirroring his posture, as if preparing for a chess match. So explain to me, she said, what exactly we're all doing wrong. Because from where I sit, people raising their voices is the only reason anything changes. Chris looked at her for a long moment, letting the silence stretch just enough. I'm not criticizing activism, or awareness, or raising voices. I'm criticizing knee-jerk reactions to incomplete narratives. I'm criticizing a culture where people quote 4 seconds of an interview and build an entire villain around it. And I'm criticizing the assumption that intent no longer matters. That's what I was talking about. Even Joy nodded at that. Sarah, who usually stayed neutral in tense moments, gave an encouraging tilt of her head. But Whoopi's expression hardened. Intent doesn't erase impact, she shot back. People get hurt because of what public figures say. You don't get to decide how your words land. Chris didn't back away. And people don't get to decide what I meant by twisting my words, he replied calmly. The audience erupted, half cheering, half gasping. Sunny looked from Whoopi to Chris, clearly calculating whether she should intervene. Joy opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. This is getting good, she muttered, unaware her mic was still on. A ripple of laughter traveled through the room, loosening the tension just a little. Chris glanced her way and cracked a brief, grateful smile before turning back to Whoopi. You're talking about impact. Great, I agree. Impact matters. But if we want meaningful conversations, we have to discuss intent too. Otherwise we're just yelling past each other. Whoopi crossed her arms. Funny, because right now it feels like you're yelling at everyone who disagrees with you. When the commercial break ended and the cameras snapped back on, the energy in the studio was nothing short of electric. The audience had returned from the break buzzing with that special kind of anticipation, the kind that happens only when a moment has caught fire and everyone knows the sparks haven't finished flying. Chris Pine sat with his hands loosely clasped, posture relaxed but eyes crystal sharp. Across from him, Whoopi Goldberg looked as if she had spent the entire break marinating in irritation. Joy, Sarah, and Sunny all wore expressions that hovered somewhere between discomfort and fascination. Even the stage crew watched from behind cameras, waiting to see who would throw the next log onto the already blazing argument. As soon as the red light above camera 2 blinked on, Whoopi leaned forward, making no attempt to ease into the conversation. Before the break, she said, looking directly at the audience instead of Chris, we were discussing how public figures sometimes minimize the struggles real people face. Chris let out a slow breath, unwilling to interrupt but already bracing himself. Whoopi continued, I think it's important we finish that thought, because too many times the people who have platforms get to walk away without accountability. Chris turned his head, facing her fully. His tone was cool, calm, but undeniably firm. I never asked to walk away from accountability. I asked for context. That's not the same thing. Whoopi's mouth twitched, the slightest hint of a smirk, but one without warmth. Context, she repeated, as if the word itself was an inconvenience. Joy jumped in before the tension could snap too sharply. Okay, maybe we should all take a breath. Nobody is trying to start a fight here. But the audience clearly disagreed. They seemed ready for exactly that. Many leaned forward eagerly, eyes bouncing between Whoopi and Chris like spectators at a tennis match. Whoopi ignored Joy entirely. Chris, she said, the issue is that when you say things like, people react before thinking, it comes off like you're blaming people for caring. I never said caring was the problem, Chris replied, his voice rising just enough to land each word. I said reaction without understanding is the problem. That's not dismissive, that's responsible. Sunny, trying to bring nuance into the room, folded her hands and spoke gently. Do you feel, Chris, that the backlash you received was unfair? He turned toward her, grateful for the chance to answer a question without barbs. I think, he said, that the outrage came from headlines, not the actual interview. And when conversations start with misinterpretations, they usually don't get better from there. The audience clapped again, louder this time. Clearly they appreciated someone who didn't back down but still kept a level head. Whoopi, however, tightened her grip on her mug. You know, she said, I've been doing this job a long time. And I can tell when somebody's trying to dodge. Chris blinked, stunned for a fraction of a second before responding, Whoopi, I'm not dodging anything. I'm addressing you directly. Really, she countered, because it sounds like you're just frustrated that people got mad at you. Joy's head whipped toward Whoopi. Oh come on, she muttered. Chris shook his head slowly. I'm frustrated at how quick we are to assume the worst of each other, he said. That's all. And then, in a moment that shifted the room entirely, Whoopi laughed, a sharp, incredulous laugh that made the audience collectively inhale. Look, she said, waving a hand dismissively, it's easy for you to say all that. You're a Hollywood guy with Hollywood problems. Real people don't get the luxury of asking for nuance when their lives are on the line. That did it. Chris leaned forward, both hands on the table now, his expression controlled but undeniably charged. Stop assuming I don't understand real people, he said. You don't know my life. You don't know what I've been through or the experiences that shaped me. Just because I'm an actor doesn't mean I don't care or don't think deeply about these things. The audience applauded so loudly that the crew had to signal for them to settle. Whoopi opened her mouth, but Chris wasn't finished, not this time. And stop suggesting that caring about context is a luxury. It's not, it's a responsibility, because if we can't talk about things honestly, without twisting words or intentions, then we stop learning. We stop connecting. We stop seeing each other. Joy nodded emphatically, clearly relieved someone was finally standing up to Whoopi in a way that was sharp but not disrespectful. Sarah mouthed, wow, under her breath. Whoopi's expression soured. So now you're lecturing us? Chris tilted his head. I'm having a conversation. If you choose to hear it as a lecture, that's not on me. The audience erupted again. Cheers, whistles, claps, like a wave crashing against the studio walls. Even the stage manager's eyes widened behind the camera. Whoopi, visibly irritated, set her mug down so hard it thudded against the table. You know what? I'm tired of guests coming on this show and pretending they have all the answers.